All right, thank you. So hello everyone, I'm Travis and welcome to the session on Windows Virtual Desktop Validation Host Pools. So I am an Azure Cloud Architect at RBA Consulting based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I blog at seraltos.com and have a YouTube channel all about Windows Virtual Desktop and other Azure related topics. I also authored the course Zero to Hero with Windows Virtual Desktop at udemy.com. I created a discount code for this event. It's WVD Tech Fest. If you're so go ahead if you're interested in that, take a look. And I'm excited to talk to you today about validation host pools. And I imagine everyone watching this is just as excited to hear about them. So raise your hand if you're new to validation host pools. Go ahead if you're at home, work, or on the subway, whatever. Obviously, I can't see you, but I'm going to continue imagining that most of you raised your hands. So let's start with the question, what is a validation host pool? I enjoy deploying Windows Virtual Desktop as much as the rest of you. I've deployed many host pools, but the fun doesn't stop at deploying host pools. This is not a set it and forget it type of technology. The host pools have to be managed, and most likely they'll need to be managed by you, keeping the OS and applications up to date. Microsoft has to update their side also, keeping the underlying hosts and the Windows Virtual Desktop service fabric up to date. So how many people here push changes straight to production, right? I'm sure nobody does that. Changes are always vetted in a test environment before they go to production. So if Microsoft has to update the underlying Windows Virtual Desktop service and the physical infrastructure, how do you, as an administrator of that service, validate these changes don't impact your services and applications prior to those updates going to production? That's what the validation host pool does. Microsoft sends service updates to the validation host pool before they go to production, or the non-validation host pool. This becomes an early warning or a canary in the coal mine, allowing you to respond to service updates in the validation host pool before they go to production. Matter of fact, validation host pool is now part of the Azure Advisor Operational Excellence. It'll report if there's no validation host pools in the environment or too many. So let's take a look at a simple way to see the difference between the validation and a non-validation host pool. Here's a screenshot of a non-validation host pool Asian version and a validation host pool at the same time. Notice they have two different agent versions. Agent versions updates go to the validation host pool first and then to the production pool. This is just one example of changes taking place in the validation host pool before production. I also have this example. This is a real example of an issue I ran into recently with the validation host pool. I highlighted two example VMs. The bottom one is available and the update hasn't been applied yet. The session hosts that were powered on got the update and went into the status of needs assistance. The needs assistance status is typically a network issue, but none of the other older agents had that. It only happened once we updated to this recent version. So I believe there was a certificate issue with a primary certificate somewhere had expired and the agent wasn't using the second certificate correctly. At least that's the response I got from Microsoft support. So that's one way we can see and respond to changes in the validation host pool before they go to the production. Okay, now that we understand how Microsoft uses validation host pools, let's go into why and how you can use them. Because setting up a validation host pool just so Microsoft can validate their updates seems maybe a little extra. Earlier I asked if anyone pushes changes straight to production and nobody responded, and that's good. But now that you know about validation host pools, let's consider this. Why not include a validation host pool as part of your change process in your environment with your updates? Oh, there we go. What I'm advocating for is using a validation host pool as a step prior to rolling out changes to production, a final test prior to production, if you will. This provides two advantages. It provides an early warning if Windows Virtual Desktop Service updates cause a problem with existing services or applications, and it provides a QA or validation step for your own changes, such as session host or application updates. There's a downside to this. What if Microsoft makes a change while you're also testing a change? We'll cover identifying service updates shortly. So let's move on to configuring the, let's see here, to setting up the validation host pool. First, it should be as similar to the production environment as possible. Variances and one-offs will make identifying issues much more difficult. Second, keep a subset of real users in the validation host pool. And let me explain what I mean about real users. Different organizations may have different policies around this, but the validation host pool will be most effective if users are actively logging in and using it. It may be necessary to tag those users through your support desk, so if that group starts reporting issues, it can be easily correlated to the validation host pool. And this is kind of my own 2 cents. I had to throw it in though. Don't let IT people test. I mean, if you have testers whose job it is to test, that's fine. But in my experience, putting IT people in a validation host pool may not lead to the intended results. I may be projecting a bit on this, but IT people's expectations around desktop may be different than your end users. In my experience, we may be a little bit more forgiving. Also, the applications and how IT uses them are often different from the rest of the organization. I also have a note, but this should go without saying, maybe don't put executives in there though. So let's go into configuring the host pool. I'm going to switch over here. So we can configure a validation host pool in a couple ways. If we go into create a new host pool, we have the option right here that we can set yes to. If we go into an existing host pool, go into under settings as properties, and there's the validation environment. So this one is my non-validation. And if we go into this one under properties again, this one is my validation. So there's pictures of that. And then also you can enable it through PowerShell. So the update AZ WVD host pool will change that validation environment from true or to false or false to true. You can also view the settings with the get AZ WVD host pool command. So that's great so far, but when do Windows Virtual Desktop Service updates actually happen? The more research I did on this, I did with service updates, the more questions I actually had. Let's dig into the question though, when do Windows Virtual Desktop Service updates actually take place? It's an easy question with an answer. Microsoft has a statement that they take place monthly, maybe more frequently, if there's a major issue. It also states, as we already covered, to keep a small group of users active in the validation environment to identify issues with updates in your environment. Okay, so I try to avoid expressions or idioms because I'm not sure how they'll translate, but I'm going back to the canary in the coal mine expression I used earlier in this presentation. Coal miners used to take a caged canary with them into the mine to detect high levels of carbon monoxide or other toxic gases. If the canary died, they knew there was a problem and to get out of there. I like this expression with validation host pools because it's basically saying we're going to let the validation host pool users be our canary, although maybe not quite that extreme. I, like many of you, would rather know of changes that may cause issues before users tell me about them. I prefer knowing when updates take place in an environment and how to handle them when it happens. Unfortunately, the guidance of monthly or more and keep a subset of users on the validation host pool is about all the information I could find on identifying updates take place. So one alternative I'll throw in here is you could use a product like Login VSI in the validation host pool to run synthetic activity in that pool, making Login VSI the canary, basically. This, of course, takes additional resources. So the rest of this presentation, I'm going to cover some steps we can take to be more informed about what's going on with Windows Virtual Desktop and Azure updates. So one of the first things to be aware of is the Windows Virtual Desktop tech community. So from here you can become more aware of upcoming changes and monitor Windows Virtual Desktop. This has a list of announcements around Windows Virtual Desktop, and it's helpful for keeping up to date with changes and features. So this is one spot you'll definitely want to keep an eye on as you move through managing Windows Virtual Desktop. And the next one is service health notifications. So if you're not familiar with service health notifications, you will be after this. So if we go into Azure, and down here we've got a little heart with like an EKG line. So this is the service health. And here we can see a bunch of active events. So we can see service issues, plan maintenance, and notice here we can select the subscription, the region, and the services. So we can see all this, health advisories if there's anything coming up, security advisories. We've got history. So this is all good, but it's not something I'm going to stay glued to all the time. You're probably not going to keep this running on a monitor someplace. So what I'm going to go over is health alerts. And what a health alert is it's just that. It's going to alert you if there's a problem with a given service. So let's create a new health alert. So you pick your subscription, and then under service, I'm just going to go Windows Virtual Desktop. Let's see here. Let me clear that out. I'll unselect all, and then go to Windows Virtual Desktop. And then you can select regions, but keep global in place. You can select multiple regions if you want, but the reason why you'll need to keep global in place, and also if you're not familiar with Azure status, this is another good location to see if there's anything going on. But what I want to point out is Windows Virtual Desktop is non-regional. So this is global, much like Azure DNS and Traffic Manager. So it's not region specific, so keep that global. And then we can select our service health criteria, so you can pick the level of alerts you want to get. And then here we create an action group. If you have one, that's great, but if you need to create one, there's a couple things I just want to go over here. You need to save this in a resource group and then give it a name and a display name. And what Microsoft does is they split the creation of an alert from the action that it takes when an alert is generated. This way you can reuse this action across multiple alerts. And then if you have to, like if somebody's position changes, you can change an email address, and you don't have to go into each alert and modify that. Under notifications, you've got a couple options here. You can select a role, and then anybody who has that role will get the alert. The important thing about this, though, is make sure that those people have a valid email address in that in their user ID in Azure. Otherwise, they won't get an email. But the other option is email or SMS. So we can select email. We can do a text message, a push notification, and sorry, voice is only available in the US. Okay. The other thing I want to just point out, because I think this is a useful tool as well, you don't have to do emails. You could do a ITSM, you could run a runbook, a function, or kick off a webhook. And I've seen some people use a webhook to send a message to Teams, because you can receive webhook notifications in Teams. So that's one of the other options for that. So once you've created your action group and you've added it, then you can give it a name, description, make sure it's enabled, and then create the rule. I already have a rule set up. So that will let you know if there's a problem, a little bit more, still a little reactive, but at least you'll know right away when there's an issue. Let's see here. The other thing I want to go over, I didn't know if I'd have enough time to cover this all, so I did a video on it. You can check that out, but there's a thing called Instance Metadata Service, so IMDS. This is an API endpoint at the IP address of 169.254, 169.254. You can use this to gather information on a VM, such as host name, VM size. One of the other things you can get is scheduled events. This endpoint, though, is only available from the virtual machine. And being that this IP address is the same for all virtual machines, if you want to query this, you have to query it from each virtual machine. But what I did in leading up to this, because I was kind of curious what kind of scheduled events happen in Azure, is I created a script that runs on a VM, and it sends the scheduled events to Log Analytics. So this runs every 5 minutes, and it just sends any scheduled events to Log Analytics. From there, you can set up alerts of upcoming scheduled events. So here's one that I got. This is a freeze. So we can see here in the event, the event type is a freeze. The resource type is a virtual machine, and we'll go down to description. The host server is undergoing maintenance. So there's this is an interesting. It was an interesting exercise, but there's a few downsides for it. First, I had to set this to run as a scheduled task that ran every 5 minutes. So my point with that is it won't scale well. I mean, maybe you could do some automation to put on a scheduled event to run. It also, there's a timing issue because these scheduled events, they may not give you much of a early warning. So it'll tell you had it. So in this case, I could know that if a user came up to me the next day and said everything seemed to be working fine, and then it froze up, I can know that, yeah, this did it. It froze up as the underlying host went under maintenance. But it doesn't give me a lot of time to respond. And some of these events will take place within a minute. There's different categories, and Microsoft has it listed. But if I'm running that script every 5 minutes and my alert is checking every 5 minutes, I mean, there could be a 10-minute window where this event has triggered or happened and then took place well before I actually got the alert. But if you want to learn more, I think it's still pretty cool to be able to query those API endpoints from within the VM. There's a good troubleshooting use for that. Okay, that's actually it for me. You can check out the video if you want to learn more. Like I said, the QR code was there. I hope this helps everybody understanding validation host pools. Thanks for joining me, and thanks to the partners for sponsoring the event and the organizers for putting it together. Again, if you're interested in my course, I've got the discount code there. And thank you for joining. Please do the assessment. Were there any questions?
Let me check, Travis. No, there was one. So Max said, I remember that screenshot very clearly, but my host pool was not in validation mode. And I think he is talking about the issue with with the status message of needs assistance.
Oh, yeah, that needs assistance. That's been happening. I posted I went to Microsoft support on Twitter with that, and they ended up opening up a case. But there was several people who came back and commented that they're getting that too, and I didn't get a great explanation that I'm very confident in, but my understanding is there was a certificate that expired, and the second certificate was not being honored or used properly. So yeah, if you're getting that, definitely on the non-validation host pool, it might be wise to reach out to Microsoft. I think there's a known issue, and it's not just your environment.
But is it fixed already, or is it still an issue?
I have not seen it in the past few weeks. So
okay.
But it seemed to happen with the 2800 version. Let's see.
Yeah, because I also know there was a version of the agent which was not signed correctly, but I don't know if it's the same issue, where the binaries were not signed with the correct certificate.
Yeah, it was happening at the 2800. The 25, 26 was fine, but yeah, definitely the 28, the 600, I think it was the 2800, 400 is when I started noticing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you got that issue, check the version of your of the agent, check your validation host pool, and otherwise reach out to Microsoft in case if you still have any issues with it.
It did seem to cause a problem. I mean, users could still log in, but if you have automation that's looking at the status of a VM to either turn it up or shut it down or whatever, and that needs assistance, that automation may not know what to do with it.
Yeah, it will probably trigger something like a repair or something else.
Yeah, and it should get the VM, the agent version should automatically get updated as long as the VM's powered on.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of control we have around that.
True. Okay. Well, I think I have one question about this, because when you enable a validation environment, do we know when Microsoft is adding new updates or new versions to that agent? There's not a what's new page or something else in the Microsoft documentation about this.
No, I wasn't. The only thing I was able to find that was really definitive was that monthly or more. So that's where I think subscribing to those service alerts is going to be helpful, because that targets specifically Windows Virtual Desktop. Checking the IMDS, that script, that's more of an Azure check. It's looking at for if the underlying host has to be go under maintenance. I remember a few years ago with the Meltdown Spectre happened, Microsoft had everybody was encouraged to redeploy their VMs because they were patching it, and they had to restart or take those underlying hosts offline. So something like that would report, although they made that very clear other ways as well.
Yeah. Or maybe you can use the log analytics event logs to search for the installation of a newer version and trigger something with it. So you indeed are it is known when the agent has been updated.
Yeah. But my understanding is the agent is just one of the pieces. So they could do, Microsoft may change the actual Windows Virtual Desktop service fabric or put an update out there. That would change, who knows what it would change. I don't have a lot of insight into what goes on behind that, but that's where having that validation host pool and which is better than nothing for sure. But there's another part of it, like what if there is a breaking change? How do you prevent that change from going to your production pool? And I haven't found anything other than opening up a support case with Microsoft.
Yeah, and preventing the installation of a newer version, for example.
Yeah.
And I think that's only happening when it's like production release. So in the non-validation environments. Yeah. There is one question. I think it's the same question, but it's Mac wants to know your recommendations about patching for shared host pools.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going down the route of redeploying session hosts. So that's where I'm leaning because some of the other projects that I've been working on is like the image builder. So if you can roll image builder, have that build a new base image every month after the second Tuesday, and then deploy those session hosts, put the old ones in drain mode, and do a migration.
Yeah,
I'm open to suggestions on that. One of the things I have seen pop up is I forget the name of the service now. It's the Microsoft
the Azure Update Management.
Yeah. Well, Azure Update Management won't work because that only works on a server OS. So with Windows 10 multi-user, that's a client OS.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't. It's a very popular service. It was for mobile device management. It's device management. I'm totally drawing a blank. And Intune. So
yeah, and then use like Windows Update for Business, for example.
Yeah, I've seen some information on that. I haven't looked too deep into it.
Yeah, but I think that's only usable for like the single session VDI, because, well, in my opinion, well, you can use whatever you would like to, but with a shared environment, I think it's better to use to update the images and do it like that. But it's quite easy. You can create a GPO for the normal Windows updates via Oasis or something else. You can use SCCM or the image-based update mechanism. Okay, let me check if there is some more. Azure Update does not control the release of Windows 10. Azure Update does not control the release of Windows 10 very well, though it will patch the OS. Okay, so as far as I can tell, so Azure Update Management can indeed update Windows 10. But I'm not sure if I'm reading it correctly from the comments in the Q&A.
Doing a new build, so if you're pulling from the managed image gallery, I would expect there would be a delay between when updates become available through Windows updates and before that base image gets them. With Image Builder, there's a customization that you can apply that will apply all the updates.
All the latest,
which one.
So yeah,
as a step in that Image Builder customization, I add that because just in case something's not covered or something rolls out mid-month.
Yeah. So, and I'm not sure if the Azure images are updated on Patch Tuesday.
Right.
I heard sometime from, I think it was Peter Wicklaven, that it is, but then the images also need to replicate across all the regions.
Yeah.
So it could take some time before the gallery images, so the vanilla images, are updated with the latest Windows 10 updates. I only know that I think it's Jim Moyle has built a script where you can easily check which versions and which build numbers of those images are available. And with that script, you can easily check which updates has been applied to that image. So you can use that script.
Yeah, that would be helpful because you could add that as part of a build pipeline. And I think that's what his ultimate goal was. He mentioned that in a different user group recently. I think that was him.
Yeah, I'm trying to search it quickly, but I think it was in his latest. I think he did 3 new videos about the image builder. I think it was over there. quickly check. If I can find it, I will drop it in the... Yeah, it's over here.
Image Builder almost went GA this last week, I think it was.
Yeah, but it looked like it was GA, but
Yeah.
it wasn't.
Yeah, I got really excited when I saw that.
Yeah, but it's still being planned for later this year, but nobody
Mhm.
knows when. But it's not
Yeah.
GA, it's still in public preview. And for everybody who is still listening on this community stage, I've just sent a link to that script from Jim Moyle, where you can, which you can use to get the latest information about the image versions on Azure. So which build is available, which updates has been applied.
That's great, thanks.
Okay, so I think we are done for today, Travis. Again, I would like to thank you very much for your time and also for your contributions to the community, for all your great videos and learning sources. In case somebody missed it, Travis has also made his Udemy course available, and there is a discount code, WVD TechFest. So use that if you want to start with the training 0 to Hero with Windows Virtual Desktop. This was also the latest session for today on the community stage. On the main stage and the partner stage, there are still 2 sessions. I think at this moment, Jen Shearing is talking on the main stage. So if you would like, you can join that one. And again, I would like to thank everyone for attending this event, this community stage. And well, we will see you the next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Travis.
Thanks for having me.